The Wolf Prince crowned another Luna while Elira Vale held the tray meant for her. That was how the court liked its cruelty. Clean. Ceremonial. Polished until it looked like law. Elira stood barefoot at the foot of the moon dais, both hands steady beneath the silver tray where the Luna crown had rested only moments before. Her servant dress was plain gray, the sleeves too short, the hem still damp from the courtyard snow. No jewels, no house colors, no wolf silk veil. Only the thin black ward cord around her wrist, marking her as a girl raised by the palace but claimed by no one inside it. Forgotten ward. That was what they called her when they remembered to call her anything at all. Not noble enough to stand with the houses. Not low-born enough to be left alone. Not wolfless. Worse. Unproven. A girl whose wolf had never come when summoned, whose bloodline had been written out of 3 family ledgers, whose name appeared in the palace registry only as kept under royal mercy. Merze. Elira had learned that word meant a locked room with clean sheets. A plate after everyone else had eaten. A place in the ceremony close enough to serve power, never close enough to touch it. Above her, Wolf Prince Cassian Veyr lowered the Luna crown onto Lady Serelle Ovray's golden hair. The hall exhaled. Silver bells rang once from the rafters. Moonlight poured through the high windows and caught on the crown's 7 white points. Noble wolves bowed. Priestesses lifted their hands. Serelle smiled with the soft triumph of a woman who had practiced humility in polished mirrors. A ruby veil shimmered over her shoulders, thin as blood-colored mist. It was meant to mark noble Luna purity, but when moonlight touched it, the red threads moved against the wind. The ruby veil did not flutter like silk. It breathed, Elira noticed. So did Cassian. For half a second, his eyes fixed on the ruby veil as if he had seen a wound disguised as silk. Serelle's smile did not change, but one of her gloved fingers pressed briefly against the ruby clasp at her throat, and the Luna crown glowed brighter than it should have. False moonlight. Pretty enough for the court. Wrong enough for the old stones. Cassian did not smile. That was the first thing Elira noticed. The second was his hand. When the crown left the tray, his fingers had brushed the silver rim beside hers. Barely a touch. Nothing anyone else would see. But his hand had gone cold. Then it had trembled. Only once. Cassian hid it quickly, because princes were trained to bleed inward. He stood tall in black ceremonial armor, silver cloak falling from his shoulders, dark hair tied back from a face too controlled to be young. His eyes were pale winter gray, distant enough to make a court obey and sharp enough to make enemies lower their throats. But when he looked at Elira, his control changed, not softened. Changed, as if something inside him reached for her, and something older dragged it back by force. Then King Malrec's voice sounded from the throne. Finish the rite. Cassian looked away. Elira lowered her head. Good. That was what forgotten girls did. They lowered their heads before anyone could notice they had been looking. King Malrec Veyr sat beneath the black moon banners with one hand resting on the throne and the other wrapped around the hilt of a black moonblade laid across his knees. The weapon was long, narrow, and dark enough to drink candlelight. Its edge carried no reflection. It did not cut flesh first. It cut what followed a body when the soul tried to run. Elira had heard whispers about that blade. It killed shadows before bodies. And tonight, Malrec's thumb moved slowly over the hilt each time Cassian's gaze drifted toward her. A warning. Not for the court. For his son. High Priestess Ormara stepped forward with the moon oath blade. Lady Serelle Ovrey, chosen by crown, court, and royal blood. Do you accept the wolf beside the prince? Serelle turned to Cassian. I accept. Her voice was clear, beautiful, empty of fear. Elira hated herself for envying that. Not the crown, not the title, the right to speak without expecting punishment. Ormara turned toward Cassian. Prince Cassian Veyr, heir of Thornmere, do you accept this woman as your Luna before moon, throne, and pack? The hall waited. Cassian's gaze dropped. Not to Serelle. To the empty crown tray in Elira's hands. For one dangerous heartbeat, silence opened between them. Elira remembered another silence. 3 winters ago, in the Old West Corridor, when she had found Cassian wounded after a border ambush. He had been bleeding through his armor, one hand pressed to his side, refusing to call for help because enemies might still be in the walls. Elira had torn her sleeve and bound the wound with shaking hands. He had watched her the entire time. Not like a prince watching a servant. Like a starving man watching a door he was not allowed to open. The next day, she had been moved from the west wing to the servant dormitory beneath the laundry stairs. No explanation, only a warning from the steward. Do not enter the prince's corridors again. Now Cassian stood above her, ready to give another woman the place the court had dressed in white. His jaw tightened. I accept, he said. The words did not break loudly. That was why they hurt. The court erupted in applause. Elira's fingers curled under the tray. A small movement, enough for the ward cord on her wrist to tighten like it had teeth. Serelle stepped closer to Cassian. The priestess lifted their joined hands to the moonlight. The Luna crown flashed. The ruby veil flashed with it. For one instant, Serelle's shadow on the floor did not look like a wolf. It looked like a red-clawed thing kneeling inside borrowed moonlight. Then the image vanished. Elira blinked. No one else seemed to notice. No one except Cassian, whose face had gone one shade colder, and Malrec, who smiled. Then the shadow behind Elira moved. At first she thought it was candle smoke, a ripple across the moonstone floor, a trick from too many silver flames. But the court's applause faltered. One noble woman gasped. Elira looked down. Her shadow no longer matched her body. It stretched behind her, long and white-edged, though shadows were not supposed to be white. It widened across the floor, paws forming where her bare feet should have ended. A spine arched, a tail unfurled. Massive ears lifted toward the moon windows. The tray slipped in Elira's hands. Cassian went still, not surprised, horrified. King Malrec rose from the throne so fast the black wolves carved into its arms seemed to snarl with him. His black moon blade came up with him. Cover the moonlight, he ordered. No one moved at first. They were staring at the floor. Elira's shadow was shifting. Not her body. Her shadow. The enormous white wolf behind her lifted its head. It was larger than any royal wolf in the hall. Its fur burned with pale moonfire. Its eyes opened silver blue, ancient and calm and impossible. It did not bare its teeth. It did not attack. It stood behind Elira like a queen's guard waking after centuries of sleep. The Luna crown on Serelle's head cracked. A single sharp sound. The hall froze. Serelle's smile vanished. The ruby veil around her shoulders flickered once, and beneath it something red and false crawled across her throat before she forced it still. Cassian took one step down from the dais. Elira, he said. It was the first time he had spoken her name in public. The shadow wolf heard him. Its silver eyes turned toward the prince. The entire court watched as every torch bent away from Serelle and toward the forgotten girl holding the empty tray. High Priestess Ormara whispered, "First shadow." The words went through the hall like a death sentence. Elira could barely breathe. She did not know what first shadow meant, but Cassian did. So did Malrec. The king descended the throne steps, black moon blade in hand, its edge drinking the white light around Elira's feet. Do not say that name. Ormara's lips trembled. Majesty, the first shadow wolf awakens only before. Silence. The command cracked across the hall. The shadow wolf behind Elira lowered its head, not in obedience, but warning. Cassian moved faster this time. He stepped between Elira and his father. Too late. Everyone saw. Serelle saw. Her cracked crown flashed again, and one of its white points fell to the floor. Cassian looked at the broken piece as if it had cut him. Malrec smiled. Cold. Victorious. There he is, the king said softly. The son who forgets what happens if her shadow is seen. Elira turned toward Cassian. What does he mean? Cassian did not answer. The pain in his face answered first. Then Malrec did. He means he was given a choice. The king's eyes moved over Elira like a blade deciding where to enter. Crown another Luna, or watch you die before the moon could name you. Elira's heart stopped. The court vanished into soundless silver. Cassian closed his eyes once. Only once. When he opened them, there was no prince left in his face. Only a man trapped inside the sentence he had chosen. I was trying to keep you alive, he said. The words should have saved something. They did not. Because Elira was still standing at the foot of his ceremony, with an empty tray in her hands while another woman wore the crown. And the worst part was that Cassian looked as if he had already known that. As if every applause in the hall had been cutting him open too. The white shadow wolf rose higher behind her. Moonlight poured through the windows, bright as judgment. Then the broken Luna crown lifted from Serelle's head by itself. Serelle screamed. The ruby veil snapped around her throat like it wanted to hold the crown down. The crown floated across the hall. Not toward Cassian. Not toward the throne. Toward Elira. King Malrec lifted the black moon blade. If the shadow crowns her, he said, cut the girl from her own shadow before it touches her hair. Cassian turned on him. No. The crown stopped above Elira's head. Her shadow wolf opened its jaws, and before anyone could strike, it spoke in a voice older than the throne. The prince chose a Luna. The crown cracked again, but the shadow chose a queen. The black moon blade moved before the crown did. King Malrec crossed the Hall of Moons with the calm speed of a man who had prepared for this moment long before the ceremony began. The blade in his hand swallowed every strip of moonlight it touched, leaving a dark wound in the air behind it. Cassian stepped in front of Elira. No one touches her shadow. The hall froze. Elira stared at his back. Only moments ago, he had crowned another woman. Now he stood between her and a blade made to kill the white wolf waking behind her. That contradiction hurt more than the crown itself. Serelle clutched the ruby veil around her throat. The red mist clung to her shoulders like something alive. Above Elira, the broken Luna crown trembled, half pulled toward the white shadow wolf, half dragged back by the ruby glow wrapped around Serelle's neck. High Priestess Ormara whispered, "The crown is rejecting the false veil." Serelle's eyes flashed. "Be silent." Her voice changed, only slightly. Enough for Elira to hear something sharp beneath it. The ruby clasp at Serelle's throat opened like a red eye, and the crown jerked back toward her. The first shadow wolf growled behind Elira. Malrec stopped before Cassian. "Step aside." Cassian did not move. Malrec smiled faintly. "Still choosing poorly." "You said she would live if I crowned Serelle," Cassian said. "I said she would live if her shadow stayed hidden," Malrec answered. "I never promised she would remain whole." The words cut through the hall. Cassian's face changed. For the first time, Elira saw his certainty break completely. He had wounded her for a bargain that had never protected her. He had chosen another Luna to save her life, only to realize his father had always meant to leave her alive in pieces. Malrec looked past him to Elira. "Forgotten ward. That thing behind you is why your bloodline was erased." Elira's fingers tightened around the empty tray. "What bloodline?" the shadow wolf answered. It lowered its massive head beside her, silver blue eyes burning with old moonfire. "Veyr." The moon windows shattered inward. No glass fell. Only white light. Elira's knees weakened. The black ward cord around her wrist tightened until blood appeared beneath it. Cassian turned sharply. "That cord." The cord began to smoke. Not from the moonlight. From fear. Malrec lifted the blade. "Cut the shadow." Cassian struck first. His sword met the black moon blade with a burst of silver sparks. The force drove both men back a step. Malrec did not look surprised. He looked pleased. "You would challenge your king for a girl who held your tray?" Cassian's voice came through clenched teeth. "For the girl you made me betray." Elira's breath caught. Serelle heard it too. Her face twisted. "You said she was nothing." Cassian did not look at her. That was answer enough. Serelle raised one hand toward the crown. The ruby veil snapped outward from her shoulders, red mist wrapping around the floating silver points. The crown stopped moving toward Elira. Then its edges began to darken. Ormara gasped. "Blood veil sorcery." Serelle's smile trembled with panic and hatred. "I was chosen." The shadow wolf's silver eyes fixed on her. "No," it said. "You were covered." The ruby veil shrieked. Elira flinched. The tray slipped from her hands and crashed against the moonstone floor. The moment it fell, her shadow lunged. Not at Serelle. At the floor beneath her feet. White claws split the old stone, revealing a hidden ritual circle beneath the dais. Dried blood, crushed ruby dust, and red symbols painted under the place where Serelle had stood crowned. Elira stared in horror. Serelle staggered. "No." Cassian looked over his shoulder. What did she do? Malrec answered calmly. What was required? Cassian's sword faltered. Malrec struck him across the chest with the flat of the black moonblade. Cassian crashed to one knee. Elira cried out. That was the opening Malrec wanted. He drove the black moonblade into the edge of Elira's shadow. Pain ripped through her ribs. Elira screamed. The white shadow wolf roared as its moonfire body split where the blade pinned it to the floor. The ward cord around Elira's wrist snapped, releasing black smoke into the air. The smoke formed a memory. A little girl asleep in a palace nursery. A dark-haired woman pressing a silver wolf pendant into the child's hand. Malrec standing in the doorway with the same black moonblade. The woman whispered, "Hide her shadow, or the throne will kneel." The memory shattered. Elira never saw the woman's face. But the shadow wolf did. Its wounded head lowered beside her. "Mother," it whispered. Elira's heart broke open with absence. She had never known why she was kept in the palace under royal mercy. Never known why her bloodline ended in torn ledgers. Never known why Cassian had looked at her like wanting to protect her was forbidden. Now she knew one thing. Someone had hidden her shadow to keep a throne standing. And Cassian had crowned another woman because Malrec threatened to finish what had begun that night. The crown still hung between Elira and Serelle, half silver-white, half red-black. It had not chosen fully. Not yet. The white half pulled toward Elira's shadow. The red-black half strained toward Serelle's ruby veil. Malrec pressed the blade deeper. "Take one step," he told Cassian, "and I cut her from the wolf before it finishes waking." Cassian froze. Serelle stood inside the broken ritual circle, ruby veil whipping around her like a living wound. "You were never supposed to be seen," she whispered. Elira looked at her. "Did you know?" Serelle's mouth trembled, then hardened. "I knew enough. That hurt colder than the blade." Elira looked at Cassian. He looked ruined. Good. Let him see what his silence had served. The first shadow wolf lifted its head despite the blade pinning it down. "Do not wait to be crowned," it said. Elira swallowed against the pain. "What am I supposed to do? Stand before the shadow dies?" Malrec twisted the blade. Elira screamed. But this time, she pushed one hand against the moonstone, then the other. Cassian whispered her name like prayer and punishment. Serelle's ruby veil flared red. Malrec's smile vanished. Elira Rose. Slowly, with the black moon blade still pinning her shadow to the floor, the floating crown cracked down the center. White light poured from one half. Red smoke bled from the other. And behind Elira, the wounded first shadow wolf stood with her. Not whole, not free, but standing. The old stones beneath the hall spoke one word. "Queen." The word struck the Hall of Moons harder than thunder. "Queen." No one bowed. No one breathed. The broken Luna crown hovered above Elira's head, split between two hungers. One half burning white, silver toward the first shadow wolf behind her, the other half bleeding red-black toward Serelle's ruby veil. It had named a truth, but it had not chosen a head. Not yet. Elira stood frozen beneath it, the empty tray still trembling in her hands. Around her bare feet, white moonlight spread across the old stones, but the black ward cord on her wrist smoked like a dying snake. Serelle touched the ruby clasp at her throat. The red veil tightened. The crown jerked backward. Elira gasped as if something had pulled a hook through her ribs. Cassian stepped toward her. King Malrec lifted the black moon blade. "Another step," Malrec said, "and I cut what remains of her shadow." Cassian stopped. Every muscle in his body shook with the effort. Elira looked at him. The man who had crowned another woman. The man who had stood between her and the blade. The man who had said he was trying to keep her alive after letting the whole court watch him wound her. She wanted to hate him cleanly. But nothing about this was clean. Serelle's voice sliced through the silence. "The crown is mine." The ruby veil flared brighter, spilling red mist over her shoulders and down her arms. The false ritual circle beneath her feet pulsed awake. Dried blood, crushed ruby dust, and old symbols hidden under the moon dais. High Priestess Ormara took one step back. "Lady Serelle, remove the veil." Serelle turned slowly. Her smile was beautiful. "Wrong. Why would I remove what made the moon see me?" The court erupted in whispers. Cassian's face hardened. "You used blood veil sorcery." Serelle's eyes flashed. I used what your father offered. The hall went still again. Malrec did not deny it. That was worse. Elira's shadow wolf growled low behind her, but the sound was weaker now. The wound where Malrec's blade had pinned it still split its moonfire body. Every pulse of red from Serelle's veil pulled the floating crown farther from Elira. The shadow wolf lowered its head near Elira's shoulder. Do not chase the crown, it whispered. Elira swallowed. Then what do I do? Find what they covered. Before Elira could ask, Serelle lifted both hands. The ruby veil snapped outward like wings. Red light slammed into the crown. The white silver half flickered. Elira staggered. Cassian's sword came up. Malrec's black moonblade came up faster. Steel met shadow again. The force driving Cassian back across the dais. Malrec leaned close to his son, voice soft enough that only the front rows heard. You should have let her remain forgotten. Cassian's eyes burned silver. You made sure she never had a choice. I gave you one. No, Cassian said. You gave me a leash and called it mercy. For the first time, Malrec's smile vanished. He struck. Cassian barely blocked the blade. The black edge slid along his sword and opened a dark cut across his shadow on the floor. Cassian hissed in pain, not from flesh, but from something deeper being touched. Elira saw it. The black moonblade did not only threaten her, it could wound any shadow it touched. That was why Cassian feared it. That was why Malrec ruled with it. Serelle cried out suddenly. Not in pain, in fury. The first shadow wolf had dragged one wounded claw through the red ritual circle beneath her feet. White moonfire split the painted symbols, revealing something buried under the ruby dust. Names. Not Elira's. Not Cassian's. Women's names. Scratched into the stone and crossed out in red. Veyra. Orith. Leora. Marin. Each name had been covered by Serelle's false moonlight. Each one pulsed when Elira looked at it. Her chest tightened. Forgotten ward. Written out bloodline. Mercy registry. The pieces began to move toward one another. Serelle saw her looking. Panic broke through her mask. Stop staring at them. Elira took one step toward the ritual circle. The crown trembled harder. Malrec shouted, Serelle. Serelle's face twisted. The ruby veil snapped toward Elira, wrapping red mist around her throat before Cassian could reach her. Elira choked. The first shadow wolf lunged, but the black moonblade pinned its wounded paw again. Malrec's voice was calm. There. That is the forgotten girl's proper shape. Silent. Cassian roared. He drove his shoulder into Malrec, forcing the king back one step. Not enough to free the shadow wolf. Enough for Elira to breathe. She grabbed the red mist with both hands. It burned cold. Serelle laughed breathlessly. You cannot tear it. The veil was woven from every shadow your family lost. Elira froze. My family? Serelle's smile sharpened. You thought you were forgotten by accident? The crown twisted overhead. The red-black half pulled lower toward Serelle. The white-silver half shook above Elira like a trapped star. The first shadow wolf spoke again, voice strained with pain. Ask the stones. Elira looked down at the moonstone floor. Her fingers still gripped the ruby mist at her throat. Her shadow bled white fire behind her. The court watched, waiting for her to fail. Waiting for Cassian to save her. Waiting for the crown to decide whether she was worth fearing. No, she would not wait. Elira dropped to one knee and pressed her bleeding wrist to the exposed names beneath the ruby dust. The hall cracked open with light. A memory rose. A woman with dark hair stood before the throne, holding a newborn girl wrapped in white wolf fur. Her shadow stretched behind her, not human, but a great white wolf crowned in moonfire. King Malrec stood before her, younger, holding the black moon blade. Beside him stood a little girl in a ruby veil, Serelle, younger. Watching, the dark-haired woman lifted the child. If my daughter's shadow wakes, she said, the throne will kneel because it remembers who stole it. Malrec's face hardened. Then the black moonblade came down. The memory shattered before the strike landed. Elira fell forward, gasping. The ruby veil loosened around her throat. Serelle was crying now, but her tears did not soften her. They made her angrier. My house was promised the Luna crown when yours was erased, she whispered. I was raised for this. Elira lifted her head. Raised to wear a lie? Serelle's face broke, then hardened. Raised to survive one, she yanked the ruby veil open with both hands. Red light flooded the hall. The names on the floor began to bleed. The crown dropped lower, not onto Elira, not onto Serelle. Between them, half white, half red, Cassian staggered away from Malrec, blood at his mouth, eyes locked on Elira. Elira, do not touch the crown. Malrec smiled again. Good advice. Elira looked from Cassian to the crown. Why? Cassian's face went pale. The first shadow wolf answered for him. Because if a false veil and true shadow touch the crown together, the weaker bloodline burns. Serelle smiled through tears. Then let us see which one the moon keeps. She lunged for the crown. Elira reached at the same time. Cassian shouted her name. The first shadow wolf tore free of the blade with a scream of moonfire and threw itself between them. Too late. Elira's fingers brushed the white half. Serelle's hand closed around the red. The crown split open. White fire rushed into Elira's shadow. Red fire rushed into Serelle's veil. Every torch in the hall exploded. And from the broken crown, a woman's voice whispered Elira's name. The woman's voice came from inside the broken crown. Elira. Not loud, not whole, but enough to make the first shadow wolf stop breathing behind her. Elira froze with one hand still touching the white half of the crown. White fire moved through her shadow like winter lightning. Across from her, Serelle clutched the red half. The ruby veil wrapped around her throat and shoulders like a living wound. Neither girl burned. Not yet. The crown had split its judgment between them. The court watched in terror as two flames climbed into the air. White moonfire behind Elira. Red bloodlight behind Serelle. Cassian staggered forward. Elira, let go. She could not. Not because the crown held her hand, because the voice had. Elira, it whispered again. Her chest hollowed. She knew that voice without remembering it. The dark-haired woman from the memory. The woman who had held a newborn girl wrapped in white wolf fur. Her mother. Serelle heard it too. Her face twisted with something uglier than jealousy. No, she whispered. She is dead, the crown answered. Not dead, covered. The ruby veil shrieked. Serelle cried out as red threads tightened around her arms. For 1 second, panic broke through her anger. Not performance. Not pride. Fear. The veil was not only her weapon, it was her cage. Elira saw it. So did Cassian. But King Malrec moved before either of them could speak. He tore the black moonblade free from the floor and swung it toward the split crown. Cassian blocked him. The impact drove Cassian to one knee again, but this time he did not fall back. His sword shook against his father's blade, silver sparks biting across his face. Break the crown, Malrec said, voice low. Or watch both girls burn. Cassian's jaw tightened. You built the fire, and you fed it when you crowned the wrong Luna. The words struck. Cassian flinched. Elira saw the pain enter him again. Sharp and deserved, but she had no room to carry his guilt. Not while her mother's voice was trapped inside a crown that still could not choose her. The first shadow wolf lowered its wounded head beside her. Ask why Serelle's veil knows your mother's voice. Serelle's eyes snapped to Elira. Do not. Elira's hand tightened around the white half of the crown. Why? The old stones answered before Serelle could. The moonstone beneath the ritual circle cracked wider, and the names crossed out in red began to bleed upward into the air. Veyra, Orith, Liora, Marin. Then a fifth name appeared. Serelle. The court gasped. Serelle went white. Elira stared at the name. You? Serelle shook her head once. No, but the ruby veil pulled tighter around her throat, forcing the truth from her silence. A memory rose from the bleeding stones. A younger Serelle stood before King Malrec. No crown, no triumph. Only a frightened girl in a red ceremonial veil. Her mother stood behind her, hands bound in silver cord. Malrec held the black moonblade beneath the woman's chin. Your house will wear the Luna crown, he said. Or your mother's shadow joins the others. Young Serelle trembled. I do not have royal shadow. Malrec smiled. You will wear what we stole. The ruby veil opened like a mouth. Inside it moved dozens of white shadows, torn thin and stained red. One of them was Veyra's. Elira stumbled back. The memory shattered. Silence crashed over the hall. Serelle's tears fell now, real and furious. I was a child. Elira's voice came out broken. So was I. The words hit harder than accusation. Serelle looked away first. The red light around her faltered. The crown trembled. Malrec saw it and raised the black moonblade again. Enough. This time he did not aim for Elira. He aimed for Serelle. Cassian saw it too late. Serelle did not move. Maybe she could not. The ruby veil had frozen around her like blood turned to glass. Elira acted before she understood why. She pulled the white half of the crown toward herself. The first shadow wolf lunged with her. White moonfire struck Malrec's blade before it reached Serelle. The black edge screamed, and the hall filled with the smell of burned shadow. Malrec staggered back. Cassian stared at Elira. Serelle stare tu. You saved her, Serelle whispered. Elira's hands shook. I saved what he was going to use against me next. It was not forgiveness. Not mercy. Only refusal. Refusal to let Malrec decide which girl deserved to be cut. The first shadow wolf's wound widened from the effort. It stumbled behind Elira, one massive paw breaking into moonlit smoke. Cassian moved toward her, then stopped himself. This time, he asked with his eyes before he touched her. Elira hated that the question mattered. She hated more that she answered by not stepping away. Cassian reached slowly and wrapped one hand around the ward cord scar on her wrist. The moment he touched it, the black mark split open. Not bleeding, remembering. A hidden symbol appeared beneath her skin. A white wolf standing behind a crownless throne. High Priestess Ormara fell to her knees. The crownless queen. Malrec's face darkened. Elira looked down at the mark. What does that mean? Her mother's voice whispered from the crown. It means the throne was never meant to choose you. The white half of the crown cracked again. It was meant to kneel. The entire Hall of Moons shook. The throne behind Malrec groaned. The black wolves carved into its arms lowered their stone heads toward Elira. Malrec roared and drove the black moonblade into the floor before the throne, forcing the stone wolves still. But the damage was done. The court had seen it. The throne had almost bowed. Cassian stepped beside Elira, sword raised, blood on his mouth and grief in his eyes. Father, release the crown. Malrec smiled. Then he looked at Serelle. Daughter of Avre, he said. Prove why your house was spared. The ruby veil snapped tight. Serelle screamed as red fire flooded her eyes. The red half of the crown melted into her hands, becoming a jagged ruby circlet of false moonlight. The white half remained above Elira, cracked and trembling, not yet settled. Serelle lifted her head, but her voice was not fully hers. Only one shadow leaves this hall. The doors slammed shut. The windows blackened. Every torch turned red, and the ruby veil released the stolen shadows inside it. The stolen shadows spilled from Serelle's ruby veil. They did not fall like smoke. They crawled. Thin white wolf shapes dragged themselves across the moonstone floor, each one stained red at the throat, the paws, the heart. Some were large enough to belong to queens, some were small enough to belong to children. All of them moved without bodies. The court screamed and scattered. The doors remained sealed. The windows stayed black. Every torch burned red. Elira stood with the white half of the crown trembling above her, and the first shadow wolf wounded behind her. The shadow wolf lowered its head, but its silver eyes did not leave the crawling shapes. They are not enemies, it whispered. Elira's stomach turned, because she already knew. The stolen shadows were her bloodline. The women whose names had been crossed out beneath Serelle's ceremony. The queens whose shadows had been cut away so Malrec's throne would never kneel. The forgotten mothers, daughters, sisters, wards. All of them dragged from the ruby veil like evidence. Serelle stood at the center of it, red circlet burning on her brow, her hands shaking violently. I cannot stop it, she whispered. Malrec's voice cut through the chaos. You were not raised to stop it. The ruby veil tightened around Serelle's throat. Her eyes filled with red fire again. You were raised to release it when the true shadow woke. Cassian's face went cold. You made her a trap. I made her useful. Serelle flinched as if the word struck harder than a blow. Elira heard it. Useful, not chosen. Not loved. Useful. The word sat between them like a mirror neither girl wanted to look into. Then the first stolen shadow reached Elira's foot. Cassian stepped forward, sword raised. Elira stopped him with one look. Slowly she knelt. The white half of the crown dipped with her, still trembling, still refusing to settle. The shadow reached toward her wrist, where the ward cord had burned her skin for years. When it touched her, pain flashed through her arm. A memory opened. A woman running through a moonlit corridor with blood on her sleeve. A black moonblade behind her. A cradle left empty. A voice whispering, "Do not let them take the shadow with the child." Then the memory vanished. Elira gasped. The stolen shadow curled against her hand, no longer crawling, but resting. Her mother's voice whispered from the broken crown, "Name them." Elira looked up. "I do not know their names." The first shadow wolf answered, "The stones do." Elira pressed her palm to the moonstone. White fire spread beneath her fingers, racing across the floor toward the red ritual circle. The names crossed out in ruby dust began to glow again. Veyra, Orith, Leora, Marin. More names appeared beneath the blood. Dozens. The court stared. Malrec's face hardened. "Do not speak them." Elira looked at him. For the first time, his command did not make her feel small. It made him sound afraid. So she spoke the first name. Veyra. The shadow at her hand lifted its head. White moonfire rushed through it, burning the red stain from its throat. The shape rose taller, clearer, becoming the outline of a queen with a wolf behind her body. The throne groaned. Malrec stepped back. Elira spoke again. Orith. Another stolen shadow stopped crawling. Leora. A third rose from the floor. Marin. With every name, one stolen shadow stood. With every standing shadow, the white half of the crown brightened. With every brightening, Serelle's red circlet cracked a little more. Serelle cried out and clutched her head. "Stop," she begged. Elira stopped. Not for Malrec. For Serelle. The red circlet was burning into her skin. Cassian saw it too. "Elira, the veil is feeding on her." Serelle laughed once, broken and bitter. "Now you care?" Cassian did not defend himself. "Good." Elira rose slowly. "Who placed the veil on you?" Serelle's eyes flicked toward Malrec. The answer was enough. Malrec lifted the black moonblade. "Finish the rite, Serelle." The ruby veil tightened. Serelle screamed. The stolen shadows, still unnamed, began to crawl toward Elira faster, no longer reaching gently, but pulled by red command. Their mouths opened without sound. Their claws scraped the stone. The first shadow wolf lunged around Elira, shielding her with its wounded body. But there were too many. The white crown half shook above Elira, not strong enough yet. The red circlet on Serelle's brow flared brighter. Malrec smiled. "See, Elira? A queen without a crown is only a girl surrounded by dead things." Cassian moved. Not toward Malrec, toward Serelle. He crossed the ritual circle and grabbed the ruby veil with his bare hand. Red fire tore into his palm. Serelle froze. Cassian's jaw clenched with pain. "You were used." Her eyes filled with tears. "Do not pretend you are kind to me now." "I am not pretending." The veil burned deeper into his hand. Cassian did not let go. "I chose you because I was afraid," he said. "Not because you deserved to be chained to my father's lie." Serelle's mouth trembled. For one breath, the red fire in her eyes flickered. Elira saw the opening. She pressed both hands to the moonstone and spoke every glowing name she could see. The Hall of Moons erupted with white fire. Stolen shadows rose one after another, queens and daughters and forgotten girls standing behind Elira in a silent army of moonlight. The red stains burned away from their throats. The ruby veil shrieked and loosened around Serelle's body. Malrec roared. He drove the black moonblade into the floor. A crack split the hall from throne to dais. The white shadows flickered. The first shadow wolf staggered. The white half of the crown dropped toward Elira. The red circlet dropped toward Serelle. Both girls looked up. Cassian shouted, "Do not let either crown close." Too late. The white crown half touched Elira's hair. The red circlet sealed around Serelle's brow. The Hall of Moons went silent. Then Serelle's eyes turned completely red, and the stolen shadows behind Elira bowed their heads. Not to Elira. To the thing waking through Serelle's veil. The thing behind Serelle opened its eyes. Not a wolf. Not a woman. A red shadow wearing the shape of both. It rose from the ruby veil like a queen made of stolen throats, tall and thin and crowned with broken crimson light. The stolen shadows behind Elira bowed their heads, not in loyalty, but in fear remembered too deeply to resist. Elira felt the white half-crown burn against her hair. It had touched her, but it had not settled. Not fully. A thin gap still remained between crown and skull, as if the old moon was waiting to see whether she would command the shadows or free them. Serelle stood beneath the sealed red circlet, eyes burning ruby, tears slipping down her face without permission. "Help me," she whispered. Then the red shadow spoke through her mouth. No. The voice was ancient. Cruel. Female. Malrec lowered the black moon blade and smiled as if the true ceremony had finally begun. The red shadow lifted Serelle's hand. Every stolen shadow behind Elira jerked. The white queens, mothers, daughters, and forgotten girls who had risen at Elira's naming were dragged one step toward the ruby veil. Elira reached for them. Stop. The crown above her flashed. The shadows froze, only for a heartbeat. Then the red shadow pulled again. Cassian stood between Elira and Serelle. One hand burned from gripping the veil, blood dripping from his mouth. "What is that?" High Priestess Ormara answered from the floor, voice shaking. "The veil, mother." Malrec's eyes cut toward her. Ormara flinched, but this time she did not fall silent. "The first false Luna," she said. "The woman who helped the throne steal queen, shadows and bind them into noble bloodlines." The red shadow smiled with Serelle's mouth. "Careful, priestess. Your temple prayed to me before it prayed to the moon." The court recoiled. Elira looked at Serelle. The other girl's face twisted under the thing using her. Serelle had wanted the crown, but not this. Not to become a door for something older than her jealousy. The Veil Mother turned Serelle's ruby eyes toward Elira. "Little crownless queen, you found the shadows, but you cannot keep them. You are not crowned enough to command them, not cruel enough to hold them." Elira's jaw tightened. "I do not want to hold them." The white half-crown flared above her. The first shadow wolf lifted its wounded head. Malrec's smile thinned. The Veil Mother's eyes sharpened. "Then you will lose them." She snapped Serelle's fingers. The ruby veil exploded outward. Red threads shot across the hall, stabbing into the risen shadows one by one. Each queen shape flickered as the red stain returned to its throat. Veyra's shadow bent backward in silent pain. Elira cried out and dropped to one knee, pressing both hands to the moonstone. "Veyra," she said. The shadow steadied. "Orith, Leora." "Marin." More shadows fought upright. The red threads strained. Cassian turned toward the court. "Speak the names." No one moved. Fear held them tighter than Malrec's soldiers ever had. Malrec laughed softly. "They will not. They survived by forgetting." Cassian's face hardened. Then he did something Elira did not expect. He lowered his sword, turned away from his father, and knelt beside her, before the entire court. "I crown the lie," he said, voice raw. "So I will speak first." The hall went silent. Cassian looked at the glowing names in the cracked floor. Veyra. The shadow of Elira's mother brightened. Orith. Another queen lifted her head. Leora. The red thread around the third shadow snapped. Marin. The fourth rose free. Malrec's face darkened. "Stand up." Cassian did not. For the first time, his disobedience was not violence. It was witness. One old wolf lord swallowed hard, then whispered. Orith. A noblewoman followed, trembling. Marin. High Priestess Ormara bowed her head. Veyra. Names spread through the Hall of Moons. Slowly, fearfully, then faster. With every name, red threads broke. With every broken thread, the white half-crown above Elira lowered a fraction closer to her hair. The Veil Mother screamed through Serelle. Serelle screamed beneath her. Two voices. One mouth. Elira pushed herself to her feet. Serelle. The ruby eyes snapped toward her. Elira stepped closer despite Cassian's sharp inhale. Serelle's body trembled under the red circlet. "Do not come near me." The Veil Mother smiled. "Yes. Come closer." Elira stopped just outside the ritual circle. "You said you were raised to survive a lie. Serelle's lips shook. The ruby fire flickered. Elira's voice softened but did not weaken. Then survive this one. For 1 second, Serelle's real eyes appeared under the red. What do I do? The first shadow wolf answered. Remove what was never yours. Serelle looked terrified. Her hands rose toward the red circlet. The Veil Mother forced them down. Malrec lifted the black moon blade. If she breaks the veil, she dies. Cassian stood. Elira looked at him. He shook his head once. Helpless and furious. Malrec smiled. Choose carefully, crownless queen. Save your enemy, and lose your shadows. Save your shadows, and let the false Luna burn. Elira looked at Serelle, then at Veyra's shadow, then at the crown above her head, still not fully settled. She understood the trap. A throne would choose one girl to sacrifice. A queen could not. Elira lifted her hand toward the white shadows behind her. I do not command you, she said. The court went still. The white half-crown trembled. Elira's voice carried through the hall. If you were stolen, choose where your shadow stands. For a breath, nothing happened. Then Veyra moved first. Her white shadow stepped away from Elira and towards Serelle. Not to attack, to surround her. Orith followed. Then Leora. Then Marin. One by one, the stolen shadows formed a circle around Serelle and the red thing wearing her. The Veil Mother recoiled. No. Elira stepped into the circle. The white half-crown finally touched her hair. Not as a full crown, as a single silver point. The first point. Her shadow wolf stood taller behind her. Serelle lifted her hands again, shaking violently. This time, the stolen shadows held the Veil Mother back. Serelle gripped the ruby circlet. Blood ran down her temples. Elira reached out and covered Serelle's hands with her own. Serelle stared at her. Why? Elira's answer came quietly. Because I know what it is to be used as proof of someone else's power. Together they pulled. The ruby circlet cracked. The Veil Mother screamed. Malrec lunged with the black moon blade. Cassian intercepted him mid-strike. Steel and shadow exploded between father and son. The ruby circlet shattered in Serelle's hands. Red fire burst upward. The Veil Mother tore free of Serelle's body, no longer hidden in the veil, no longer borrowing a girl's face. It rose above the hall in its true form. A giant crimson wolf. Queen made of stolen shadows. Crowned in bloodlight. The white shadows around Elira did not bow this time. They stood. The Veil Mother opened its jaws. And every shadow in the Hall of Moons began to detach from its owner. Every shadow in the Hall of Moons began to tear loose. Nobles screamed as the dark shapes at their feet stretched away from their bodies, dragged toward the crimson wolf queen hovering above the broken dais. Guards dropped their swords. Priestesses clutched their robes. Even King Malrec's shadow bent toward the Veil Mother, though he fought it with the black moon blade clenched in both hands. Elira felt her own shadow pull too. The first shadow wolf behind her snarled, digging its glowing paws into the moonstone. The single silver point of crown fire in Elira's hair burned cold against her scalp. Not enough to rule, but enough to keep her standing. Serelle collapsed beside her, free of the ruby circlet, gasping like someone dragged from deep water. Cassian held Malrec's blade away with his sword, but his shadow stretched thin beneath him, tearing from his boots inch by inch. Get down, he shouted. The Veil Mother opened its jaws wider. No shadow belongs to flesh, it hissed. All shadows return to the veil. Red light flooded the hall. A young guard screamed as his shadow ripped halfway from his body. The moment it tore free, his face went blank, empty of will. He fell to his knees like a puppet with its strings cut. Elira understood. The Veil Mother was not killing them. It was hollowing them, turning the court into bodies without witness. The first shadow wolf pressed its wounded head against Elira's shoulder. Name the bond between body and shadow. Elira's breath shook. I do not know it. You do. They made you live without it. The words struck her harder than fear. Forgotten ward. Kept under mercy. A girl seen only when useful. A body allowed in the palace, but a truth cut from the records. She had spent her life treated like a person without a shadow. Now the hall was learning what that meant. Elira lifted her bleeding wrist. Stop. The word did not stop the Veil Mother, but it stopped one shadow. A child's shadow, torn from a young page near the steps, froze just before the red light swallowed it. Elira spoke again, louder. "You are not Vale. You are witness." The child's shadow snapped back to his feet. The page gasped and collapsed. Alive. The first shadow wolf's eyes flared. Elira turned toward the court. "Your shadows are not servants. They are what remembers where you stood when truth came." Malrec laughed through gritted teeth. "Pretty words will not save them." Elira looked at him. "No. But ugly truths might." She pressed her palm to the moonstone. White fire ran through the floor, touching every torn shadow. Let every shadow show what its body tried to hide. The hall exploded with memory. A noble lord's shadow showed him signing away a ward's inheritance. A priestess's shadow showed her sewing red thread into ceremonial veils. A guard's shadow showed him carrying torn ledgers to the furnace. A court lady's shadow showed her watching Elira sleep as a child. Then crossing her name from a family tree. The court began to break. Not from pain. From exposure. The Vale mother shrieked, but the shadows resisted her pull. They wanted to return to their bodies now. Not because their bodies were innocent, but because truth had made them heavy. Cassian's shadow snapped back under him. He staggered, then drove Malrec back one step. Serelle lifted her head, still shaking. Her eyes fixed on a shadow near the ruby ritual circle her own. It showed a little girl in a red veil, standing beside her bound mother while Malrec promised survival in exchange for obedience. Serelle covered her mouth. Elira saw her choice forming before Serelle made it. Serelle crawled to the ritual circle and pressed both hands into the crushed ruby dust. "My house helped cover Veyra," she said, voice breaking. Ovray wore stolen shadows. The red circle cracked. The Vale mother screamed. Malrec turned on her. "Ungrateful girl." Serelle looked up, tears bright on her face. "No. Useful girl. That is all you ever made me." Then she dragged her hands through the ruby dust, destroying the circle. The red fire around the Vale mother flickered. Elira felt the white half-crown lower another fraction. A second silver point formed beside the first. Not full. Still not enough. But growing. Malrec saw it. His face twisted. He shoved Cassian back and raised the black moonblade toward Elira's throat. "Then I end the shadow at its source." Cassian lunged. Too slow. The first shadow wolf moved first. It stepped through Elira. Not around her. Through her body like moonfire through glass. Elira cried out as cold power flooded her ribs. For one heartbeat, her body and shadow stood in the same place. Then the wolf emerged in front of her and caught Malrec's blade in its jaws. The black moon blade screamed. Cracks spread along its edge. Malrec stared. Impossible. The first shadow wolf's voice filled the hall. "A blade made to cut shadows cannot kill the first one." It bit down. The blade shattered. Black moonlight exploded across the floor. Malrec staggered backward, empty hilt in hand. Every stolen shadow in the hall snapped free of the Vale mother's pull and returned to its owner with violent force. Nobles gasped. Guards fell. Priestesses sobbed. The Crimson Wolf Queen crashed down onto the dais, weakened but not destroyed. "Elira Swayet." Cassian caught her before she hit the floor. This time she did not pull away. Not because the wound was healed. Because the battle was not finished. Above them, the broken Luna crown trembled again. 2 silver points now burned above Elira's hair. The remaining 5 still floated, cracked and uncertain. The Vale mother lifted its massive crimson head and smiled with teeth made of stolen night. "You have freed their shadows," it whispered. "But not yours." Elira went still. The first shadow wolf behind her faded suddenly, its body thinning like mist. Cassian's grip tightened. "Elira?" Malrec began to laugh. Low. Bleeding. Victorious. "Did you think I hid her shadow in a cord?" he said. The broken hilt in his hand opened like a black flower. Inside it burned a tiny white wolf heart. Elira's shadow wolf staggered. Malrec smiled. "Her true shadow has been inside my blade since the night Veyra died." The white wolf heart burned inside the broken hilt. Elira could not breathe. The first shadow wolf staggered behind her, its moonfire body thinning with every pulse of that tiny trapped light. The great wolf that had stood between her and the court, between her and Malrec's blade, between her and the crown that still hovered unfinished above her head, suddenly looked less like a guardian. It looked like something bleeding out. Cassian held Elira upright. His face had gone pale. "No," he whispered. Malrec smiled through the blood on his mouth. "Yes." The broken hilt opened wider in his palm, black metal peeling back like petals around the white wolf heart. It pulsed once. Elira gasped. The pain went through her shadow first, then her ribs, then the hollow place in her chest where she had always felt unfinished without knowing why. Malrec lifted the hilt. Veyra hid the child. I kept the shadow. A fair exchange. The court recoiled. Even Serelle looked sick. Elira stared at the white wolf heart. "That is mine." Malrec's eyes sharpened with satisfaction. Now she understands. The Veil Mother, weakened on the dais, laughed softly. A queen without her true shadow cannot be crowned. She can only be borrowed. The unfinished crown above Elira trembled. 2 silver points burned in her hair. 5 remained cracked and floating. The truth struck the hall at once. Elira had awakened, but not fully. The first shadow wolf had risen, but not whole, because the deepest part of her shadow had been inside Malrec's blade since the night her mother died. Cassian released Elira carefully, as if afraid one wrong movement would break her. Then he turned toward his father. "Give it back." Malrec's smile vanished. "You still speak as if I owe you anything." Cassian stepped forward. "You took her shadow. You made me crown another woman. You put Serelle in a veil made of stolen blood. You built a court where every choice led back to your hand." Malrec's grip tightened around the hilt. "I built a kingdom that survived." "No," Cassian said. "You built a throne that feared kneeling." The old stones beneath the hall rumbled. The throne behind Malrec groaned again. The black wolves carved into its arms lowered their heads another inch toward Elira. Malrec saw. His face hardened. He pressed his thumb against the white wolf heart. Elira screamed. The first shadow wolf collapsed to one knee behind her. Cassian lunged. The Veil Mother moved at the same time. Red shadow burst from its broken body, wrapping around Cassian's legs and dragging him back. Cassian slashed through it, but more threads came, binding his wrists, his throat, his sword arm. Serelle crawled toward the ritual circle, still shaking. "Stop using me." The Veil Mother's crimson eyes flicked toward her. "You were made to be useful." Serelle flinched. Then her expression changed. Not healed, not forgiven, but done. She grabbed the shattered ruby circlet from the floor and drove its broken edge into the red ritual circle. Ruby fire exploded upward. The threads around Cassian loosened. Serelle screamed as the fire burned through her hands, but she held the shard down. "I am done being useful." Cassian tore free. Malrec turned the hilt toward Elira's shadow wolf. "Take another step and I crush it." Everyone froze. The white wolf heart pulsed weakly in his hand. Elira stood alone now, the half-crown cold above her hair. The wounded first shadow wolf kneeling behind her. Her mother's voice whispered from the broken crown. "Elira." Elira closed her eyes. For a moment, she saw the memory again. A dark-haired woman holding a newborn child. A silver wolf pendant. A black moon blade. Hide her shadow, or the throne will kneel. Her mother had not hidden her because Elira was weak. She had hidden her because the throne was. Elira opened her eyes. "Cassian." He looked at her. "Do not save me by taking it from him." His face twisted. "Elira." "No." Her voice shook, but it carried. "I have been guarded, hidden, moved, renamed, and spared in pieces my whole life. Not again." Malrec laughed. "Listen to her. She thinks courage can replace a stolen shadow." Elira looked at him. "No," she said. "But truth can call it home." The hall went silent. The first shadow wolf lifted its head. Elira turned toward the court. "Every record that named me Mercy," she said. "Speak what I was." No one moved. Fear returned. Old fear. Throne fear. Blood of fear. Then High Priestess Ormara rose from her knees. "Veyra's daughter," she said. The white wolf heart pulsed. Malrec's fingers tightened. An old wolf lord stepped forward. "Last shadow of the crownless line." Another voice followed from the back. "Hidden queen." "Blood." Serelle lifted her burned hands from the broken ruby circle. Her voice was hoarse. The girl my house helped erase. The wolf heart flared brighter. Malrec staggered. No. Cassian stepped beside Elira. This time, not in front of her. Beside her. I name her, he said, voice breaking but clear. Elira Vale. The woman I betrayed. The queen I was taught to fear. The shadow I could not kill by choosing another crown. The white wolf heart burst from the hilt. Malrec screamed. The broken black metal shattered in his hand, and the tiny white heart flew across the hall like a falling star returning upward. It struck Elira's chest. Not hard. Deep. White fire filled her lungs. Her shadow slammed back into her body. Elira cried out as the first shadow wolf rose behind her, no longer wounded, no longer split, no longer borrowed from the floor. Whole. Massive. Crowned in moonfire. The 5 remaining silver points of the broken Luna crown moved at once. Serelle's red half cracked apart and fell from her brow in dead ruby dust. The crown did not settle on Elira's head. Instead, every silver point turned downward, toward the throne. The old stones spoke again. Not one word this time. Ekamo. Knail. The throne cracked from crown to base. King Malrec fell to one knee. Not by choice. By memory. The first shadow wolf stepped behind Elira, whole and bright, and lowered its head over her shoulder. Then the doors of the Hall of Moons burst open. Outside, every royal shadow in Thornmere was bowing toward the palace, and beneath Elira's feet, the crownless throne began to wake. It did not rise from the floor. It remembered itself. The cracks spreading beneath Elira's feet filled with white moonfire, tracing an ancient shape hidden under the Hall of Moons. Not the black throne Malrec had ruled from, not the silver dais where Serelle had been crowned. Something older waited beneath both. A circle. A wolf. A woman standing without a crown. Elira felt the shape under her skin before she understood it. The first shadow wolf stood behind her, whole at last, its massive white body burning with calm moonfire. Its head hovered over her shoulder, close enough that its breath moved through her hair like winter wind. Across the hall, King Malrec remained on one knee. His face was white with rage. He tried to stand. The old stones growled. His knee struck the floor again. The court saw it. The king who had made everyone else kneel could not rise before the girl he had kept under mercy. Cassian stood beside Elira, blood on his armor, sword lowered but ready. He did not step ahead of her this time, did not shield her without permission, did not turn her into something to be protected instead of heard. That mattered, but it did not erase. Elira looked at him once. He lowered his eyes. Good. Serelle stood near the broken ritual circle. Hands burned from destroying the ruby dust. The dead remains of the red circlet scattered around her feet. Without the veil, she looked smaller. Not innocent. Not safe. Just human. The Veil Mother was still there. Weakened. Crouched on the moon dais in the shape of a crimson wolf queen, its body flickering where the stolen shadows had been torn away. Its eyes burned red, fixed on Elira with hatred sharpened by fear. You think a throne kneeling makes you queen? It whispered. Elira felt the half-crown above her hair tremble. The silver points hovered there, close but not settled. The crown still had not fully claimed her. Maybe it never would. The first shadow wolf answered softly. A crown can be stolen. The old stones beneath Elira answered with a deeper sound. A shadow cannot. Malrec lifted his head. Enough. His voice cracked across the hall with the old command. Some nobles flinched. Some guards looked down. But no one bowed. Malrec saw that. For the first time, fear crossed his face without disguise. He looked toward the black throne behind him, cracked from crown to base. I am Thornmere. The crownless floor glowed brighter. The old stones answered. No. The words shook dust from the rafters. Elira's breath caught. It was not her voice. Not the wolf's. The hall itself had spoken. Malrec's hand closed around the broken hilt of the black moon blade, though no blade remained. I kept this kingdom alive. The throne cracked again. From inside the split black wood, shadows poured out. Not wolf shadows, human shadows, women's shadows, children's shadows, old king's shadows, all of them bent, twisted, cut at the throat where the black moon blade had once severed them from truth. The court recoiled. Elira understood then. The blade had not only held her true shadow, it had fed the throne. Every shadow Malrec cut had become another layer of obedience beneath his rule. The Veil Mother smiled slowly. Now she sees. The throne did not steal alone. Malrec turned sharply. Be silent. The Crimson Wolf Queen laughed. You borrowed my veil, my stolen shadows, my red crown, and now you pretend you were king by your own strength? The court stared between them. The alliance cracked in public. Serelle took one step forward. You used her too. Malrec's eyes snapped to her. Serelle flinched, but did not step back. You used the Veil Mother. You used my house. You used Cassian. You used me. Her burned hands shook at her sides. You made every lie depend on someone else bleeding for it. The Veil Mother's red eyes narrowed. Careful, false Luna. Serelle looked at her. For once, she did not look away. I am not your Luna. The words struck the broken ruby circle. Red dust turned black. The Veil Mother shrieked and lunged toward her. Cassian moved, but Elira lifted her hand. Wait. The first shadow wolf stepped forward. Not attacking. Blocking. Its white body stood between Serelle and the Crimson Wolf Queen. The Veil Mother recoiled from the moonfire but smiled through its pain. You defend her again? Elira's voice was quiet. I defend the truth, she finally spoke. The silver crown points above her lowered another inch. Malrec saw. His rage sharpened into desperation. He spread both hands over the cracked throne. Then let truth judge all of us. The black throne opened. A deep hollow appeared inside it, darker than any shadow in the hall. From within came the sound of a wolf howling underwater. Cassian stiffened. Elira turned to him. What is that? Cassian's face went pale. My oath. Shadow. Malrec smiled. Cold again. He was sworn to the throne before he was old enough to speak. Every prince of Thornmere leaves a shadow under the seat. Insurance against betrayal. Elira stared at Cassian. His jaw tightened. I did not know. Malrec laughed. Of course you did not. Loyalty works best when it is planted before memory. The hollow inside the throne widened. A younger shadow of Cassian appeared inside it, a child on his knees, a silver oath cord around his throat, one hand pressed to the black throne while Malrec stood above him. Young Cassian whispered, What if I choose wrong? Malrec's younger voice answered, Then the throne will choose through you. The memory vanished. Cassian staggered as if struck. The hollow pulled at him. His shadow stretched toward the throne. Elira's heart clenched. The first shadow wolf growled. Malrec rose 1 inch from his forced kneel, feeding on his son's oath shadow. You see, Elira? You have your shadow. But he does not have his. Cassian's sword slipped from his fingers. He dropped to one knee, not before Elira, but toward the throne. His face twisted with pain, as the hollow dragged his shadow from under him. Elira moved toward him. Cassian forced out one word. Don't. She stopped. His eyes lifted to hers. Do not trade your shadow for mine. The fact that he knew she might hurt worse than the warning. Elira looked from him to the throne. The court watched. Malrec smiled. The Veil Mother smiled. Both waiting. Both certain. A girl who had been hidden would give herself away to save the man who wounded her. That was the story they understood. Elira stepped closer to Cassian. Not to sacrifice herself. To stand beside him. You do not get my shadow, she said to the throne. The hollow roared. Elira lifted her bleeding wrist toward the court. And you do not get his. The first shadow wolf lowered its head. Name the oath that stole him. Cassian's voice broke. I do not know its name. Elira looked at Malrec. Then he will. Malrec's smile vanished. Elira turned to the throne. Show us. White moonfire struck the black hollow. The throne screamed. And from inside its deepest shadow, Cassian's stolen oath began to speak. Cassian's stolen oath spoke from inside the throne. Not with his voice. With the voice of a child trying not to cry. I give my shadow to Thornmere. The Hall of Moons went silent. Cassian's face drained of color. Inside the black hollow, the child shadow of him knelt with a silver oath cord around his throat. His small hand pressed against the throne. Malrec stood behind him, one hand on his shoulder, the other holding the black moon blade. The child spoke again because the oath forced him to. If my heart chooses against the crown, Let the throne choose through me. Elira looked at Cassian. His eyes were fixed on the memory. Not angry. Worse. Recognizing a wound he had lived with so long, he thought it was loyalty. Malrec's voice from the memory came calm and proud. Good. A prince must never belong to himself before he belongs to the throne. Young Cassian whispered, Will it hurt? The younger Malrec smiled. Only if you resist. The memory shattered. Cassian gasped as his shadow stretched farther toward the hollow. The throne pulled harder. The first shadow wolf snarled, but Elira lifted one hand, stopping it. This was not a thing they could tear apart with teeth. Not yet. Malrec rose another inch from his forced kneel, feeding on the oath shadow. There. Truth. As requested. Elira looked at him. No. That was theft wearing ceremony. The old stones beneath her feet warmed. Malrec's jaw tightened. Elira stepped toward the hollow throne. Cassian was a child. So was every heir? Malrec snapped. That is how kingdoms survive. The Veil Mother laughed weakly from the dais. Listen to him, crownless queen. Thrones do not raise children. They harvest them. Cassian's knees struck the floor harder. His shadow was almost fully inside the throne now. Elira turned to him. Cassian. He lifted his head with effort. The pain in his face was raw. Do not give anything up for me. I am not. She stepped beside him, not in front of him. You have to take it back. His laugh broke in his throat. I do not know how. Yes, you do. He shook his head. Elira's voice sharpened. The night you crowned Serelle, you made a choice from fear. Make one from truth now. The words hit him. Cassian looked at the throne, then at Malrec, then at Elira. His shadow strained between body and hollow, thin as torn black silk. Malrec smiled. He cannot. The oath was sworn before memory. Elira looked toward the court. Then memory will answer for him. She lifted her bleeding wrist. The first shadow wolf stepped behind her, whole and bright, its white moonfire flooding the cracked hall. Every person who saw a child prince become property, Elira said. Speak. No one moved. Fear again. Always fear first. High Priestess Ormara was the first to bow her head. I saw the oath cord placed around his throat. Cassian's shadow stopped stretching. An old guard lowered his sword. I stood at the door. Another voice followed. I heard him cry afterward. Cassian closed his eyes. The court began to shift. One by one, witnesses spoke. I carried the silver cord. I polished the blade. I was told all princes swore it. I said nothing. Each confession burned white across the floor. Each truth pulled Cassian's shadow back by a thread. Malrec roared. Silence! This time the hall did not obey. The old stones answered him first. No. The word cracked the throne wider. Cassian pressed one shaking hand to the moonstone floor. His voice came rough. I was not born to be your hand. The hollow screamed. Malrec staggered. Cassian lifted his head. I was not made to crown your lie. His shadow snapped halfway back to his body. Elira's chest tightened. Cassian looked at her then. And the whole court saw the grief in him. I wounded you because I obeyed fear. The words were not excuse. They were surrender. I cannot undo that. Elira's throat hurt. No, she said. You cannot. He accepted it. Then he turned back to the throne. But I can choose now. Cassian reached into the hollow with his bare hand. The court gasped. Black shadow fire swallowed his arm to the elbow. His face twisted in agony, but he did not pull back. Inside the throne, the child shadow looked up at him. Cassian's voice softened. You are not the throne's. The child shadow trembled. You are mine. He pulled. The silver oath cord snapped. Cassian's shadow tore free of the hollow and slammed back into his body. The impact threw him backward, but Elira caught his shoulder before he fell. For one breath. They were close. Too close to all the pain between them. Then she let go, and he let her. The throne screamed. Malrec collapsed fully to both knees. The Veil Mother rose one final time, crimson body flickering. Break the throne, and every shadow it held will flood the kingdom. Your court will drown in what it buried. Elira looked at the black throne, at the shadows inside it, at the women cut at the throat, the children, The old kings. The forgotten wards. The stolen princes. No, she said. They will not drown us. The first shadow wolf lowered its head. They will witness us. Elira stepped to the center of the crownless circle beneath the floor. The silver crown points above her hair trembled, waiting. This was the moment the court expected her to take power, to let the crown settle, to become the thing everyone could kneel to and understand. Instead, Elira lifted both hands and pushed the crown away. The silver points froze. The court gasped. Malrec stared. Fool. Elira's voice carried through the broken hall. No throne crowns me with pieces of women it failed to remember. The crown cracked apart. Not into ruin. Into light. Each silver point flew toward one of the stolen shadows inside the throne. Veyra's shadow brightened first. Then, Orith, Leora, Marin, dozens more. The cut marks at their throats vanished in white fire. The black throne split from base to crown. The Veil Mother screamed as red light tore out of her body and dissolved into the names on the floor. Serelle fell to her knees, sobbing, free at last from the last thread of the veil. Malrec reached for the broken throne. Mine, the old stones answered. Never. The throne collapsed into ash. Malrec's shadow rose behind him, no longer obedient. It stood over him like a wolf-shaped judge. The shadows he had cut circled him, not killing him, but taking back every piece of fear he had used as law. His crown fell. No one picked it up. Elira stood in the center of the hall with no crown on her head. Behind her, the first shadow wolf burned whole and white. Every royal shadow in Thornmere bowed. Not to the throne. To truth. Cassian lowered himself to one knee before her. Elira looked down at him. Pain still alive in her chest. Do not kneel because you regret me, she said. He lifted his eyes. I kneel because I remember you. The words struck softly. Not enough to heal everything. Enough to begin. I chose wrong, he said. I crowned another woman. I let you stand beneath my silence. I thought saving your life mattered more than giving you the truth. Elira's voice was quiet. It did not. I know. He did not reach for her. Did not ask to be forgiven. Did not call her his. Good. She was tired of men making names into cages. Serelle bowed her head from the broken ruby circle. Elira. Elira turned. Serelle's burned hands shook in her lap. My house helped erase yours. Yes, Elira said. Serelle swallowed. I will speak every name I know. Elira held Hergaze. Then start with my mother. Serelle bowed lower. Veyra. The first shadow wolf closed its eyes. A woman's shape appeared in the white moonfire behind Elira. Not fully alive, not fully gone. Dark hair. Silver eyes. A hand lifted toward her daughter's cheek. Elira. Veyra whispered. This time Elira did not break. She stood. Veyra smiled through moonlight. Crownless does not mean unchosen. The hall opened to dawn. Black banners turned silver at the edges. The broken dais sank into the floor. The crownless circle beneath Elira's feet remained, not as a throne, but as a law. No shadow would ever again be cut from its owner to feed a crown. Malrec was bound by his own shadow before the ruined throne. The Veil Mother faded into red ash beneath the names she had stolen. Serelle lived, uncrowned and watched by every truth she had helped cover. Cassian rose only when Elira gave the smallest nod. He stood beside her. Not before her. Not above her. Beside her. The first shadow wolf lowered its head over them both. And as dawn touched the Hall of Moons, Elira Vale, the forgotten ward, the girl kept under mercy. The woman whose shadow shifted first walked past the fallen crown without picking it up. The court bowed anyway.